Yo, 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 what's up, guys? In this video, we are going to be talking about me again. So, last video, I was really confused yesterday night. I was really confused. And after I stopped streaming last night, I spent like the entire night till like 8 a.m. Getting my finances in order, just writing it in my checkings and everything so that I can have my thing in Google Sheets. Now, that was really helpful and it gave me like a sense of peace. But I realized I'm starting new projects because I feel some sort of resistance from the project I've started. And I was thinking, oh, maybe instead of working today, I should just do my company work, and so that my day tomorrow would be chill. But no, I have to like work on my stuff because I'm going to leave this company anyway. There's no point of me working harder, if you understand. Mm, so yeah, that was the case. So today we are going to be creating the website for ZeniSpace and say that this is where AI meets psychiatry and working with psychiatrists to like create innovative solutions that helps using AI to like automate the boring stuff. I guess that's the pitch. So we create a copy for that, create a website. We'll do it all today. So and publish it so that the website is live. See how that is going, and let's see how that goes. Okay. So we are there. So let's start. Oh, let's do like a art of war Sun Tzu thing. So we'll do the art of war. We will change the one. So this is the art of war. Let's change it. I need to cut my hair. I understand. I know, but here are the cards. So we're gonna like pick one, and I usually like pick. Maybe I should like pick from the bottom. This one. If you know the enemy and know yourself, you need not fear the results of 100 battle. If you know yourself but not the enemy, for every victory you gain, you will suffer a defeat. If you know neither the enemy nor yourself, you will succumb in every battle. Know yourself, know your partner. Self-awareness is essential to happiness. It's so bizarre. What this is telling and what that is telling has nothing to do with each other. But anyway, I like this. So I'll put this side up. Put this one here. So that's our okay. All right, let's go. Okay. A psychiatrist, he needs to be willing and work with me.
most of the time that I spend one-on-one in a deep conversation that's undistracted throughout the week, I trained myself over, when I started doing it, 700 episodes, now 900, whatever. And I knew what I could do to say to this therapist to just sort of veer off a little and create some nice story, put a bow on it, push it across the table, and watch your eyes light up a little bit, like a little grin or a self-deprecating joke or whatever. Like, you're not here. You're performing. You're doing the Chris Williamson thing with the sort of jazz hands.
So I have my own version.
Okay, tell me.
Okay, so you have podcast Chris.
Uh-huh.
I have podcast guest Naval.
Right? Precisely.
So very often I'll think of something. I'll have what I think is an insight, and I want to tweet it or write it down. But in my mind, I'm talking about it on a podcast. That's kind of how my mind registers it. And for a while, I thought this was a bad thing, and I tried to eradicate podcast Naval. And then I just realized that's just how it comes out, so I might as well just be okay with it. Now, do you know the reason I'm on this podcast?
No.
I haven't done a proper formal interview, straight up top, 10, 20 podcasts in a long time.
Since Rogan, maybe?
Probably since Rogan.
Yep.
Yeah, I went out at the top, right? That was the theory.
Yeah, well, it's still at the top.
Yeah, I know. And then, I've done some stuff with Tim Ferriss, a good friend, but that's been more co-hosting. I haven't been a guest. And then I did one or two random things where I just stumbled into a thing where, there was a reason, but it wasn't like this. And I reached out to you for this one, right? I have lots of people reaching out to me for podcasts. I do not answer them. I reached out to you. And the reason is a really funny one. It's because when I am playing Podcast Naval in my head, for some reason, you're on the other side. And I don't know why. I literally don't know why. It's not like I've even seen many of your podcasts. I think I've seen some snippets here and there. But for some reason, you were the guy in the podcast, in Podcast Naval. And so I was like, I might as well just do it. So I reached out to you.
I wonder if this will close that loop or further entrench it. I wonder.
There's a style of carving where artists are turning flat pieces of wood into flowing waves, and lately it's been blowing up all over the internet. Not only because the end result is beautiful, but watching that process is extremely satisfying. The more I watch these videos, the more I'm wondering, can a beginner actually do this? Wood projects. Ultimately, I ended up completely sanding Painting on this carved surface was completely different than painting the whale piece from my previous project. The shadows created by the carved curves, based areas, letting the texture. The cross-grain carves that I was worried about earlier ended up helping the painting. The downward grain lines made the wave movements feel more natural, almost like the water was getting
therapy because most of the time that I spend one-on-one in a deep conversation that's undistracted throughout the week, I trained myself over, when I started doing it 700 episodes, now 900 and whatever. And I knew what I could do to say to this therapist to just sort of veer off a little and create some nice story, put a bow on it, push it across the table and watch your eyes light up a little bit, like a little grin or a self-deprecating joke or whatever. I'm like, you're not here. You're performing. You're doing the Chris Williamson thing with the sort of jazz hands.
So I have my own version.
Okay, tell me.
Okay, so you have podcast Chris.
Uh-huh.
I have podcast guest Naval.
Well, precisely.
So very often I'll think of something. I'll have what I think is an insight, and I want to tweet it or write it down. But in my mind, I'm talking about it on a podcast. That's kind of how my mind registers it. And for a while, I thought this was a bad thing, and I tried to eradicate podcast Naval. And then I just realized that's just how it comes out, so I might as well just be okay with it. Now, do you know the reason I'm on this podcast?
No.
I haven't done a proper formal interview, straight up top, 10, 20 podcasts in a long time.
Since Rogan, maybe?
Probably since Rogan.
Yep.
Yeah, I went out at the top, right? That was the theory.
Yeah, well, it's still at the top.
Yeah, I know. And then, I've done some stuff with Tim Ferriss, a good friend, but that's been more co-hosting. I haven't been a guest. And then I did one or two random things where I just stumbled into a thing where there was a reason, but it wasn't like this. And I reached out to you for this one, right? I have lots of people reaching out to me from podcasts. I do not answer them. I reached out to you. And the reason is a really funny one. It's because when I am playing Podcast Naval in my head, for some reason, you're on the other side. And I don't know why. I literally don't know why. It's not like I've even seen many of your podcasts. I think I've seen some snippets here and there. But for some reason, you were the guy in the podcast, in Podcast Naval. And so I was like, I might as well just do it. So I reached out to you.
I wonder if this will close that loop or further entrench it. I wonder if you've made it way worse now and you're just going to have, first off, it was a dream and now it's reality plus a dream. And
now I
can't get away from him.
Yeah, there are enough people that I turned down where I said I'm just not doing podcasts. I feel bad about that. I got to go back and do those podcasts. But I probably wear out my welcome. I have nothing new to talk about. So I don't know what I'm going to say.
Well, I appreciate you said on Rogan, and this was something, to kind of pay it back to you. I had a 5-headed Mount Rushmore of guests before I started this show. And it was Jordan Peterson, Sam Harris, Alain de Botton from the School of Life, you and Rogan. And that was my hydra of a Mount Rushmore. And I think someone had asked you at some point, maybe it was a tweet or something after Rogan, or maybe even said it on Rogan, where you said, I don't like to say the same thing twice, at least not in the same way.
I don't like sequels. Yeah.
Yeah. And I really, really respected that. That was 2019. You said it was 8 or 9 years ago. It wasn't as long ago as you
I
might
have a
think.
terrible memory.
Yeah.
You're right, 2019, right before COVID.
Yes. And I really appreciated that because there is something, the content game, you can continue to sort of, I'm sure I'll have said many things today that the audience will have already heard, but caring enough about having novel insights, or at least having a new perspective on similar insights. Say, in the space of 6 years since you were on Joe, a lot of these things, I'm coming at them. Actually, the first thing I said to you today, I'm not convinced that I actually fully agree with that thing that I used to say, which is cool, right? That's you showing that the position that you put in the ground previously is not a tether. It's not you being held to it anymore.
Well, I think the reason why I wanted to be on this is because for some reason I have the impression that you engage in conversations. And I like conversations. I don't like interviews.
Mm-hmm.
This is why I was doing my last startup, AirChat, which is all about conversations. And conversations to me are more genuine. They're more authentic. There's a give and take. There's a back and forth. There's a genuine curiosity. It's not to say the other podcasters don't do it. They absolutely do it. But for some reason in my mind, I had you as the guy that I would actually have a conversation with. And sure enough, you just read me your essay, which I don't think anybody else would really do, right? That implies there's a give and take. There's a genuine curiosity. And I think that's useful because then certain inexplicit knowledge that I had will be surfaced for myself. And I think that's helpful.
Well, you're seeing, to kind of break the fourth wall a bit, you're seeing very much of some of the gateway drug insights that you had that you just don't get to choose. I'm aware that you kind of have an anti-guru sentiment in you, like a very strong, don't listen to me, I don't know what I'm doing.
Yeah, it's a trap. No, guru's a trap.
Do not follow me, do not bow to me, do not do any of the other things to me. But if you see resonance in another person. And I think this is what we're all trying to find. You know, people can complain about the mountains of content creation that happens, and maybe rightly so. But if you're able to find someone and you see in them a little bit of you, maybe not even much of you, but like, oh, that bit of them, their self-esteem, or the way they look at relationships, or what they want to do, the kind of life they want, or the level of peace of mind that they want to have, or whatever it might be. If you find in somebody else a little bit of that, it's kind of like what you were saying before. You can no longer be unconvinced of that, and it steps in and becomes a part of you. And yeah, you're maybe seeing reflected back to you some, you know, this sort of percolated, very meandering insight from however long ago that something's happened. And maybe in, you know, 5 years' time, you'll be like, you know, that thing that you said about the lessons of the blah, 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 and then, I don't know, it's cool. That's like synthesis, right? It's this sort of blending of...
The reason I spend a lot of time in San Francisco is because it's a gravitational attractor for the smartest people in the world. And despite all of the many problems the city had, because it's mismanaged beyond belief, it does just seem to pull in the young, smart, creative people. Not just the ones who are building technology, but they're exploring every facet of life, and they're weird, and sometimes it's repulsive and it's bizarre, but you talk to these people and you just see a very intelligent person coming at life in a completely different way, putting it through the combinatorics of human DNA, which are uncountable, and giving you a weird perspective that can twist your mind around. And to do that, you always have to be learning. You can't be in a guru mentality. If I'm with somebody and they're listening to every word I say and hanging on it, that's not interesting for me. I'm not going to learn anything. I want people who are intelligent, who will say something back that is a little different, and I may not agree with it, but it's going to leave a mark. It's going to leave an impression. And it's going to leave an impression to the extent that both that they are correct and that I choose to listen. And I'll choose to listen if I don't view myself as higher status or smarter than them. The flip side of that is I'm not really impressed by high status people. Like, I don't, just because
Has that always been the case?
Pretty much. In fact, most of my friends who have gone on to become very famous or successful, the more famous successful they've been, the less I spend time with them. Partially because they get surrounded by an army of sycophants, which gets hard to break through. And because I don't want anything from them, and I don't like that. I don't like these situations in which transactional relationships are implied.
That can be a gift, though, to people who are of that, because the higher that they climb up that hierarchy, the fewer and fewer people don't want anything from them. So in that way, you can be an even better friend.
Right, but they get surrounded by people who do want things from them and are so good at pretending they don't that it's just not worth my time to try and break out from that group. So it does get lonely at the top, so to speak, but it's also by choice, because, you know, it's... You can
Champagne problem.
Yeah, you can be your own best friend too. I am my own best friend, actually. So I really do enjoy spending time with myself.
Yeah, the smartest people aren't interested in appearing smart and don't care what you think.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of life is not giving a shit. You know, a lot of the best things in life come out of that.
Does this mean, you're sort of talking about that rote memorization masquerading as wisdom and insight thing, which I think perhaps almost certainly podcasts like this will have contributed to. You know, you hear an Alain de Botton, who's, you know, like a painter with words, very simple, very sort of unpretentious, but if you're intellectually curious, you only see the production of his thoughts. You don't necessarily see the work that's gone into the thoughts behind. So you confuse the presentation of them for the insight. Does that make sense?
Of course, yeah. A lot of my stuff is more polished. Like, one of the funny things... one of the funny things that right before this podcast was I thought, oh, maybe I should go back and read my old tweets to sort of remember what I said and I can articulate it well. But then I realized that's just performance. I would just be memorizing my whole stuff to perform.
Well, that's an extra special level of hell that you've descended into.
And I'm
rote memorizing me to be more me.
Bingo. And to live up to some expectation or some famous personality that I now have to become, some straitjacket that I have to put on.
Yeah, so I'm having to live up to in private the things that I proclaim.
That's right. So, of course, pretty quickly I saw through that. You know, it's nonsense. And it also constrains my time, and it's just work. And I
think that's you know, your meditation practice at work there, that mindfulness gap, to be like,
yeah,
there's that thing again.
Exactly.
Hello.
So it's not about changing your thoughts. It's not about fixing your thoughts. It's not about changing yourself. It's just about being observant of yourself so that you can then it'll automatically change. Whatever change needs to happen will happen. You trying to change yourself is very circular.
Self-love. Self-love. Okay, I'll just be back.
One of those chunks got so big that its gravity started capturing massive amounts of gas that were swirling around inside the disk, and just kept doing that for billions of years until it became what we see today. That makes sense, and if true, would mean that inside Jupiter there must be a very big and incredibly dense core of solid rock and metal. An alternative theory, just for fun, is that Jupiter actually started its life. A separate gigantic cloud of gas that was sitting just outside of the early solar system. Over time, that cloud got so big that it eventually collapsed under its own gravity and formed into a dense ball of gas. This is pretty much the same way that a star is formed, only stars need a much bigger cloud of gas to get started. So, in this case, you just get a really big planet. And then eventually that new planet got pulled in by the gravity of the sun and settled down into an orbit. If this were true, then Jupiter wouldn't really have a core at all. It would just be like a big layer cake of gas. But the theory most of us were taught was about the big solid core that captured all of the gas. And again, that does make sense. It's not a crazy thing to believe, but it's also not correct. Our first real breakthrough with understanding Jupiter came in the mid-1990s. This is one of those insane coincidences that sounds too good to be true. But in July 1995, the planet was hit by a comet. This is not a common thing. It's estimated that a collision like this might happen once every 6,000 years. But we were around to see this one, and we had the technology to watch it all happen. This comet was named Shoemaker-Levy 9, and it was a very big chunk of frozen ice and rock hurtling through the solar system at 216,000 kilometers per hour. It's hard to say how big the comet really was because by the time we found it, the powerful gravity of Jupiter had already fractured the object into a couple dozen pieces. But the largest of those pieces was still around 2 kilometers across. And at this point in time, NASA had their newly operational Hubble telescope ready to observe the impact. But there was a big problem. The pieces of the comet were going to hit Jupiter on its far side, out of view from the Earth. We were gonna miss it. Except at the exact same time that this once in 6,000 year event was happening, NASA just also happened to have a spacecraft arriving at Jupiter. This is Galileo. named after the first astronomer to have studied the planet through a telescope. The probe was launched in 1989 on a mission to investigate Jupiter and its moons. It was scheduled to arrive in December 1995, and now it had a clear view on its approach of the comet's impact. What it saw was 21 separate collisions over the course of 6 days, with the largest chunk of comet unleashing the equivalent energy of 300 million atomic bombs, making it the biggest explosion ever caught on camera. As the planet rotated around, the Hubble telescope was able to see the aftermath of those strikes. They actually left behind these big black holes in the clouds, and they kicked up massive plumes of debris that were thousands of kilometers high and lingered above Jupiter for months. And this is what the Galileo spacecraft arrives at. The insides of Jupiter have been kicked out into space, and the probe is able to fly right through them. This is our first look at what's underneath the cloud layer that people have been staring at in wonder for hundreds of years. The most interesting thing that Galileo found was actually water. A lot of water. And scientists thought that was pretty weird. Weird enough that they started working on another mission to Jupiter with a new probe that would be designed specifically to seek out the planet's true nature. That mission was named Juno. The spacecraft was launched in 2011, and it arrived in 2016 to begin solving the mystery within Jupiter's core. So when we say that everything you were taught in school is wrong, that's because we didn't even start to learn the real truth until this past decade. So here's what your science teacher didn't know at the time. Jupiter is not made of gas. It is covered in big, thick clouds of gas that form all of those swirling rings and storms. But those clouds are just a thin layer on top of much stranger things down below. But let's start from the top. In the clouds of Jupiter, the temperature is below negative 100 degrees Celsius. Water ice crystals interact with ammonia, which acts as a natural antifreeze, allowing liquid water to exist in the upper cloud layer. As droplets collide with ice crystals, the clouds become electrified and trigger gigantic lightning storms that rage all across the surface. This super chilled water and ammonia mixture eventually clicks together into slushy hailstones that fall down into lower atmosphere, where they melt into rain, evaporate, and then rise back up to start the process all over again. These jets of hot gas that rise up to fuel the raging storms on the surface reach deep down into the planet's atmosphere. This is what we are seeing in the Great Red Spot. Not only is it thousands of kilometers in diameter, it also extends down hundreds of kilometers into the ammonia rain. The red spot reaches up higher than any other clouds on Jupiter, extending above the surface level and absorbing more UV light from the sun, which then reacts with chemical compounds in the storm and creates that deep red color. Imagine a cloud 10 times taller than Mount Everest and 10 times deeper than the ocean. And that still wouldn't even be big enough to capture the scale of the red spot. As spectacular as this outer layer might appear, the average depth of these ammonia and water clouds
Alright guys, I have to
is
go
around 50 kilometers.
do some laundry stuff. I'll be back. Alright, guys. Alright, guys. I guess we'll end the stream now. So I'll eat now and then I'll get back to you guys. Alright, guys. Take care. Bye bye.